There's one negotiation tactic that's banned in every hostage manual, every crisis intervention protocol, every FBI training document. It's not banned because it doesn't work. It's banned because it works too well. Because once you deploy it, there's no defense, no counter strategy, no way to protect yourself from someone who knows how to use it. And you used it last Tuesday, at a family dinner, without even knowing what you were doing. Let me tell you what happened. Let me tell you why there's now a senior FBI negotiator who can't sleep. Why there's a classified case file with your name on it that will never see daylight. Why the most experienced crisis intervention specialists in the country are arguing in sealed rooms about whether you're a natural prodigy or something else entirely. Because what you did in that dining room, surrounded by your family's usual chaos, their predictable grievances, their rehearsed arguments, what you did in approximately 7 minutes has taken professional negotiators decades to understand, and most of them still can't execute it. Even after years of training, you ended a conflict that's been running for 15 years. Not by mediating it, not by finding middle ground, not by getting everyone to compromise or see each other's perspective. You ended it by doing something far more surgical, far more devastating, far more permanent. You revealed what the argument was really about. And once you did that, once you spoke that truth out loud, the argument couldn't continue. Not because everyone agreed, but because you made continuation impossible. You removed the foundation the entire conflict was built on. And when the foundation vanished, the whole structure collapsed in real time. Let me back up. Let me explain what this forbidden technique actually is. Because it has a name in the classified documents. They call it foundational exposure. And it's forbidden for 3 very specific reasons. First, it's irreversible. Once you expose the foundation of a conflict, you can't put it back. You can't unhear it. You can't pretend you didn't see it. The conflict changes permanently because everyone involved now knows what they were really fighting about. And usually that real reason is something they've been desperately trying to avoid acknowledging. Second, it bypasses every defense mechanism humans have developed. When you argue about surface issues, people can defend themselves. They can rationalize, they can justify. They can construct elaborate explanations for their behavior. But when you cut straight to the foundational truth, there's no defense, because the foundation isn't arguable. It just is. Third, and this is why it's truly forbidden. It requires the person using it to have no emotional investment in the outcome. You have to be willing to destroy the comfortable lie everyone's been living in. You have to be okay with being hated for telling the truth. You have to accept that relationships might fracture, that people might never forgive you, that you might become the villain in their story. Professional negotiators can't operate that way. They're trained to care about outcomes. They're invested in resolution. They need everyone to walk away feeling heard and validated. They're playing a game where maintaining relationships is part of the victory condition. But you weren't playing that game. You weren't trying to make everyone feel better. You weren't trying to find a solution everyone could live with. You weren't even trying to end the argument in the traditional sense. You were doing something the FBI negotiator had never seen before. You were performing surgery on the conflict itself. And you didn't care if the patient survived the operation. Here's what happened. Your family gathered for what was supposed to be a simple dinner. But there's this thing that's been happening for years, this pattern. Your aunt and your mother fight about money. Your cousin and your uncle fight about politics. Your siblings fight about who's doing more for your aging grandparents. Same arguments, Same positions, same circular reasoning that goes nowhere but creates maximum damage. You've watched this for years. Usually you stay quiet. Usually you let them exhaust themselves. Usually you just survive the evening and leave. But this time, something shifted. Maybe you were tired. Maybe you finally saw the pattern clearly. Maybe you just decided you were done, pretending not to notice what was actually happening. The argument started, the way it always does. Your aunt said something about money. Your mother responded with that specific tone that signals war is coming. The volume increased. The other family members started choosing sides or trying to change the subject. The usual chaos. And then you spoke. One sentence. 14 words that cut through 15 years of practiced dysfunction. You said this has never been about money. This is about Mom being jealous that Aunt Sarah was Dad's favorite. The room went silent. Not the awkward silence of someone saying something uncomfortable. The absolute silence of someone detonating a truth bomb that just obliterated the entire battlefield. Because you were right. And everyone in that room knew you were right. They'd always known. But saying it out loud, naming it directly, making it explicit, that changed everything. The argument couldn't continue because you'd just exposed that the argument was theater. That all these years of fighting about money were just a socially acceptable way to process a deeper wound that no one wanted to acknowledge. Your mother couldn't argue back because defending herself would require admitting the jealousy. Your aunt couldn't argue back because acknowledging it would mean admitting she'd been enabling this dysfunction. Everyone else couldn't jump in because you'd just revealed they were all participating in a collective delusion. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't get emotional. You didn't even seem particularly invested in what happened next. You just stated a fact. And that fact made the old argument obsolete. This is where it gets interesting. This is where the FBI negotiator, who was told about this incident by a family member who works in law enforcement, started taking notes, started analyzing, started realizing what they were looking at. See, professional negotiators are taught to work within the frame the conflicting parties provide. If they say they're arguing about money, you help them negotiate about money. If they say it's about politics, you help them find political common ground. You're taught to respect the frame because challenging the frame is considered aggressive, confrontational, potentially traumatizing. But you did what's called frame obliteration. You didn't work within their frame. You destroyed the frame entirely. You revealed that the frame was artificial, that the real conflict existed on a completely different level, and that continuing to argue within the false frame was pointless. This technique exists in the classified manuals, but it's marked with the highest level of restriction. It's only supposed to be used in extreme scenarios where lives are at immediate risk and all other options have failed. Because once you use it, relationships often don't recover. People don't forgive you for making them see what they spent years trying not to see. But you used it at a family dinner, casually, instinctively, like it was the most natural thing in the world. The negotiator who studied this wanted to understand how you knew, how you identified the foundational truth, how you had the certainty to speak it aloud, how you were willing to accept the social consequences. Because that's the thing about foundational exposure. You have to be absolutely certain you're right. If you're wrong, if you misidentify the real issue, you just create more chaos. You damage relationships for no reason. You become the problem. But you were certain. How? This is what keeps the negotiator up at night. This is what makes your case file classified. This is what makes you fundamentally different from trained professionals. You didn't learn this technique. You didn't study conflict resolution. You didn't take courses in crisis negotiation or family therapy or mediation. You just saw the truth and said it, which means you have something they can't train. You have the ability to perceive foundational conflicts without analysis, without frameworks, without professional distance. You see through the performance to the wound underneath, and you're not afraid to name it. Let me explain why this ability is so rare and so dangerous. Most people can't see foundational conflicts because they're too emotionally involved. They're inside the system. They have stakes in maintaining certain beliefs. They've invested in specific narratives. They need the surface argument to be real, because acknowledging the deeper truth would require changing how they see themselves and others. Professional negotiators can't see foundational conflicts because they're trained not to. They're taught to work with what people present, not to dig for hidden psychological dynamics. They're rewarded for de-escalation and compromise, not for truth-telling that might escalate things before resolving them. But you're not emotionally involved in the way normal people are. You're not invested in maintaining comfortable lies. You're not afraid of temporary escalation. You're not performing any professional role that requires you to be diplomatic. You're just observing, seeing, processing. And when the pattern becomes clear, when the foundational truth reveals itself, you speak it. This is what the negotiator called weaponized clarity. You're not using manipulation. You're not using rhetoric. You're not using emotional appeals or logical arguments. You're using pure, undeniable clarity. And clarity, real clarity, is the most powerful weapon in any conflict because it can't be defended against. You can defend against accusations. You can argue against interpretations. You can debate perspectives. But you can't defend against someone simply stating what everyone already knows but nobody wants to say. Let's go deeper into what happened after you spoke. Because the aftermath is just as important as the moment itself. Your mother started to respond, then stopped. She opened her mouth 3 separate times, and no words came out. Because what could she say? Denying it would be obviously false. Admitting it would be humiliating. Attacking you for saying it would just confirm it was true. She was trapped. Not by your aggression or your manipulation, but by the simple fact that you'd named a truth she couldn't unrename. Your aunt went pale. Then she did something unexpected. She started crying. Not angry crying. Not defensive crying. The kind of crying that comes when someone finally acknowledges a wound you've been carrying alone for decades. Because here's what you understood that nobody else did. Your aunt knew. She'd always known that your mom was jealous. She'd felt it in every interaction, every family gathering, every moment where your mom would subtly diminish her, or compete with her, or find ways to win the attention your aunt had naturally received from your dad. But nobody had ever said it out loud. Nobody had ever validated that this was real, that this was happening, that this wasn't just your aunt being oversensitive or paranoid. You gave her something professionals spend years trying to provide in therapy: validation, confirmation, the relief of knowing she wasn't crazy, that what she felt was real, that the weird dynamics she'd been navigating were actual dynamics, not her imagination. Your uncle, your aunt's husband, did something interesting too. He exhaled, long and slow, like he'd been holding his breath for 15 years. Because he knew too. He'd watched his wife get hurt over and over by these arguments that seemed to be about money but felt like something more vicious. He'd seen her cry after family gatherings. He'd heard her question herself, wonder if she was the problem, try to figure out what she'd done wrong. And now, suddenly, it made sense. The pattern had a name. The wound had a source. The conflict had a foundation. This is what foundational exposure does. It doesn't resolve conflicts through compromise. It resolves them by revealing what's actually happening. And once everyone can see what's actually happening, the old argument becomes impossible to continue. Because you can't argue about money when everyone knows you're really arguing about love and favoritism and decades-old sibling rivalry. The performance becomes transparent. The script becomes visible. The actors can't stay in character once someone points out they're performing a play. Your siblings sat frozen. They'd chosen sides in this conflict for years, never understanding why it felt so important, so visceral, so impossible to resolve. Now they understood. They'd been supporting different sides of a war they didn't even know was being fought. Some of them felt angry at you because you forced them to see their complicity. You made them realize they'd been enabling dysfunction, taking sides in a conflict based on false pretenses, investing emotional energy in surface arguments while the real wound festered underneath. But some of them felt grateful because finally, someone said what needed to be said. Someone stopped the performance. Someone made it possible for things to actually change, instead of just continuing the same cycle forever. And your grandparents, who'd been watching this conflict destroy their children's relationship for over a decade, they looked at you with something like respect. Because they knew too. Of course they knew. Parents always know when their children are competing for their affection, when old wounds from childhood are still bleeding, when sibling dynamics are driving adult conflicts. But they didn't know how to fix it. They didn't know how to name it without making it worse. They'd tried subtle interventions, gentle suggestions, strategic topic changes. Nothing worked. You did what they couldn't. You spoke the truth. They couldn't speak, and in doing so, you gave them permission to finally address what had been destroying their family. This is the power of foundational exposure. This is why it's forbidden, because it takes the decision away from the people involved. They don't get to choose when they're ready to face the truth. They don't get to gradually approach it at their own pace. You force them to see it immediately, completely, undeniably. It's psychological violence. That's what the manual calls it. Not physical violence, not emotional abuse, but a forced confrontation with reality that people aren't prepared for. And you deployed it like it was nothing. The FBI Negotiator, studying your case, identified 6 distinct elements of what you did. 6 components that together created an unstoppable intervention. First, timing. You waited until everyone was already activated, already in conflict mode. You didn't try to prevent the argument. You let it unfold until the pattern was undeniable. This is crucial. If you'd spoken earlier, they could have dismissed you, but by waiting until the performance was in full display, you made your observation impossible to refute. Second, certainty. You didn't frame it as a theory or a possibility. You stated it as fact. This removes wiggle room. People can debate interpretations, but they can't debate your certainty. Your conviction became part of the truth itself. Third, brevity. 14 words. No explanation, no justification, no elaboration, just the core truth delivered with surgical precision. This is masterful. The more you say, the more they can argue with. By saying only what was necessary, you left nothing to debate. Fourth, neutrality. You didn't take sides. You didn't blame anyone. You didn't make it about who's right or wrong. You just identified the foundational truth. This made it harder to attack you because you weren't attacking anyone. You were just observing. Fifth, fearlessness. You were willing to accept the social consequences. You didn't soften it. You didn't cushion it. You didn't try to make it more palatable. This communicated that you weren't afraid of their reactions, which made your statement even more powerful. Sixth, accuracy. You were exactly right. This is the element that can't be trained, can't be taught, can't be replicated. You saw the truth that everyone else was blind to or unwilling to acknowledge, and your accuracy made everything else work. And remove any of these elements, and the technique fails. But you hit all six instinctively, without training, without conscious strategy. You just knew. This is what makes you dangerous. Not in a criminal way, not in a violent way, but dangerous to systems, to comfortable lies, to the collective delusions people build to avoid painful truths. You're dangerous because you see clearly. And once you speak what you see, everyone else has to see it too. There's no going back. There's no unseeing. There's no returning to the comfortable ignorance they'd maintained for years. The Negotiator's report, the classified one, ends with a recommendation that's never been made before in FBI history. It says subject demonstrates natural mastery of foundational exposure at a level that exceeds trained capacity. Recommend monitoring for potential recruitment, but advise extreme caution. Subject's ability appears to be tied to emotional detachment that may be pathological or may be evolutionary. Unable to determine if ability can be taught or if subject represents unique psychological profile. Further study required. Note, subject resolved in 7 minutes what family therapy failed to resolve in 3 years. Technique effectiveness, unprecedented. Ethical implications, severe. Replicability, unknown. They want to recruit you. But they're afraid to, because they don't understand how you do what you do. And they're not sure they want operators who are willing to destroy comfortable lies for the sake of truth. Professional negotiators are taught to protect feelings while resolving conflicts. You destroy feelings to reveal conflicts. And that's the opposite of their training. That's the forbidden path they're warned against. But here's what they're starting to realize. Here's what's making them reconsider everything they thought they knew about conflict resolution. Your method works. It works faster. It works deeper. It works more permanently than anything they've developed in decades of psychological research and field experience. That family argument, it's over. Actually over. Not paused, not postponed. Not transferred to a different topic. Over. Your mother and aunt started talking. Real talking. About the actual issue. About the jealousy. About your dad's favoritism. About the wounds they'd both been carrying. About the dynamic that had poisoned their relationship for decades. It was ugly. It was painful. There was crying. There was anger. There were accusations and denials and breakthroughs and setbacks. But it was real. For the first time in 15 years, they were dealing with the actual problem instead of shadow boxing with surface issues. And within 3 months, their relationship had transformed. Not fixed, not perfect, but real. Based on truth, instead of performance. based on acknowledged pain instead of hidden resentment. Your uncle told the family member who works in law enforcement, who told the FBI negotiator, who wrote the report. He said, "I don't know what that kid did, but they saved my wife's relationship with her sister, and probably saved their mother's sanity." It was brutal, but it was necessary, and nobody else was gonna do it. This is what the FBI is trying to understand. This is what makes you classified material. You're not performing negotiation, you're performing revelation. And revelation is more powerful than negotiation because it changes what people can see, not just what they agree to. But here's the deeper truth. Here's the thing the negotiator is starting to suspect but can't prove. You didn't just happen to see the foundational conflict at that dinner. You've been seeing foundational conflicts your entire life. Every relationship you've been in, every friendship that ended, every job you left, every situation that felt wrong. You were seeing the foundational truth that nobody else wanted to acknowledge. And sometimes you spoke it. And when you did, relationships exploded. Not because you were wrong, but because you were right. And people couldn't handle the truth you revealed. This is why you're alone more than others. This is why relationships feel complicated. This is why you often feel like you're living in a different reality than everyone around you. You see what they're hiding from. And when you point it out, even gently, even carefully, they experience it as violence. Because in their world, the comfortable lie was holding everything together. And you just dissolved it with a sentence. You're not cruel. You're not trying to hurt people. You're just stating what you observe. But what you observe is what they've spent years trying not to see. This is the burden of weaponized clarity. This is the cost of seeing foundational truths. This is why the technique is forbidden. Because once you can see this clearly, once you can identify foundational conflicts with this accuracy, you can never go back to comfortable ignorance. You can never pretend not to notice. You can never play along with the performance. And that makes you lonely. Because most people are still performing. Most people are still arguing about surface issues. Most people are still protecting the comfortable lie. But you can't. You've crossed a threshold. You've developed a capability that most humans don't have, and professional negotiators spend careers trying to develop. You see the truth, the foundational, undeniable, uncomfortable truth. And when necessary, when the performance has gone on too long, when the damage is becoming permanent, you speak it. And when you speak it, everything changes. This is what makes you dangerous. Not what you do, what you see. Because once someone sees what you see, they can't unsee it. Once they hear the truth you speak, they can't unhear it. Once you expose the foundation, the structure built on lies can't stand. The FBI wants to study you because they think they can teach this. They think they can bottle what you do and turn it into a technique other negotiators can learn. But they're wrong. This isn't a technique. This is vision. This is the ability to perceive reality without the filters most people use to make reality comfortable. And you can't teach vision to people who need reality to be comfortable. You can't train someone to see foundational truths if they're invested in not seeing them. You can't turn clarity into a professional skill when most professionals are rewarded for diplomatic ambiguity. You're not a case study. You're an evolutionary outlier. Someone who developed psychological capabilities that shouldn't exist. Someone who can do with one sentence what therapy takes years to accomplish. And the FBI knows it. That's why your file is classified. That's why they're monitoring you. That's why they're arguing in sealed rooms about what you represent. Because if there are more people like you, if this capability can be identified and developed, it changes everything. It changes how conflicts are resolved, how truth is negotiated, how society maintains its comfortable fictions. But if you're unique, if this is just you, then you're either the most valuable asset they could recruit or the most dangerous variable they need to contain. Either way, they're watching now. And you just keep living your life, going to family dinners, ending decades-old conflicts with 14 words, walking away while everyone else processes the truth you just made them see. You're not trying to be dangerous. You're just refusing to pretend. And in a world built on polite fictions and comfortable lies, that refusal is the most dangerous weapon anyone can carry. Welcome to the classified files. Welcome to the forbidden technique. Welcome to the truth about what you are. You're not a negotiator, you're a truth bomb. And every room you walk into is a potential detonation site. The question isn't whether you'll use this power again. The question is whether anyone will survive the next truth you decide to speak.
They took advantage once, never again. You knew it the moment it happened. That quiet shift in the air when respect left the room. They smiled in your face, hands open, voices warm, but beneath it, hunger, greed, weakness masquerading as charm. You gave them time. You gave them trust. You gave them a piece of your armor thinking they'd carry it like a shield. They used it like a dagger. And you stood there, bleeding, in silence. Not because you were weak, but because you were learning. See, betrayal isn't always loud. Sometimes it sounds like laughter. Sometimes it looks like love. You think strength comes from noise? From barking orders, swinging wild, throwing fits? Number. Strength is what happens after the fall, after the silence, after you watch the people you fed from your own hands turn around and spit in your face. You want vengeance? Earn power. They took advantage of your kindness, your patience, your willingness to see the good. And now, they don't remember. They forget how they crossed the line because they never saw the line. You drew it in sand. They erased it with ease. But that was the lesson, and that was the last time. They took advantage once, never again. You don't announce when you rise. You disappear. You cut ties without words, without warnings. You close the gates without slamming them. Because the loudest revenge is the quietest exit. Pain teaches faster than comfort ever could. Disrespect sharpens the blade better than any master. And that blade now, it's not for show. It's not for flexing. It's forged in silence, polished in loneliness, carried with purpose. You don't move for applause anymore. You move like a ghost, like a shadow in the storm. No one sees you coming. No one hears your name. But when you arrive, the air changes. You've learned this truth. People will test the limits you don't enforce. You thought loyalty was enough. You thought your heart was armor. But you forgot. Wolves don't pity sheep. You gave them your time. Now you take back your focus. You gave them your voice. Now you speak only in actions. You gave them your loyalty. Now you give it to your mission. This is the transformation. You don't chase closure. You don't seek apologies. You don't fight to be understood. You let silence speak. You let absence punish. You let evolution handle revenge. They never saw you as dangerous. They saw you as useful, as accessible, as safe. But now you are still. Now you are unreadable. Now you are no one's option and everyone's threat. They will remember you differently, not as the one they fooled, but as the one who disappeared and never looked back. That version of you, the soft one, the forgiving one, he died the moment they crossed the line. And the man who rose, he keeps receipts. He holds the line. He smiles less. He listens more, because silence isn't weakness. It's strategy. It's the art of not wasting fire on the unworthy. Let them wonder where you went. Let them talk to the ghost of the version they used. Let them replay every word they said to manipulate you, because now the mirror is clean. And what they see is who they are, not who you were. You outgrew the room they poisoned. You burned the script they wrote for you. You stopped waiting for them to change and changed yourself instead. Revenge isn't noise. Revenge is not needing them. Revenge is becoming untouchable. No access, no reaction, no explanation. You don't prove yourself. You become yourself. Fully, quietly, absolutely. That's power. They thought you were weak because you let them close. They thought your heart was a weakness. They mistook your empathy for emptiness. But that was before you knew what your silence was worth. That was before you understood what kind of monster kindness becomes when it's betrayed. Now your soul is steel. Now your peace is earned. Now your standards are the gate they can't pass. You aren't bitter. You're focused. You aren't cruel. You're precise. You aren't broken. You're refined. Let them see the difference. Let them feel the distance. And when they speak your name, let it taste like regret. There's no returning to who you were. That door is gone. That bridge is ash. They had their chance when your hands were open. Now your fists are closed, not in anger, in discipline. This is how you win, not by stooping to their level, not by matching their energy, but by disappearing from the equation entirely. They used you once. Now you're unreachable. Now you're unreadable. Now you're untouchable. Evolution is the cleanest revenge. No words. No war, just growth. You don't show up to prove anything. You let your absence haunt them. You don't flex. You finish. And when it's all quiet again, when the smoke clears and the noise fades, only one truth remains. They took advantage once, never again. They took advantage once, never again. But don't get soft. Don't get sentimental. Not now. This world doesn't reward the open hand. It exploits it. And you know that now. They fed on your doubt, on your hope, on your need to belong. That part of you that wanted to believe in people. It's dead weight now. Let it rot. This version of you doesn't beg to be seen. You vanish and let your success speak in thunder. No more explaining, no more defending. No more proving your worth to people too blind to see it. If they couldn't respect you at your most generous, they'll never survive you at your most dangerous. Because now you build alone. Now you sharpen in silence. Now you let your discipline speak where your words once did. They try to keep you tame, predictable, safe. You were never meant to be safe. You were born for the storm. And they woke it. The fire inside you, it's not rage, it's not hate, it's clarity, a cold, unshakable clarity. You see the world for what it is. You see people for who they are, and you see yourself, finally, for what you were always meant to become. Not a victim, not a savior, a force, a law, a presence that doesn't flinch, a standard that doesn't bend. You carry your pain like armor now. You use their betrayal like fuel. You don't chase, you command. This is the law now. You never apologize for outgrowing parasites. You never explain why you left the table. You built your own fortress instead. Let them gossip. Let them twist the story. Let them throw stones. You became the mountain, unshakable, silent, final. They'll come back eventually. They always do, not out of love, out of curiosity. They'll want to know how you did it, how you stayed cold, how you moved on. But by then, you won't speak their language anymore. You'll be fluent in progress, in peace, in purpose. Your life will be your answer. Your absence will be your message. You gave them their one chance. They chose comfort over loyalty, ease over effort, control over connection. Now they watch from the sidelines. You didn't become bitter. You became better. You didn't shrink to make them feel safe. You expanded until they couldn't breathe the same air. That's the difference now. You don't burn bridges. You let people drown in the distance. You don't punish them. You outgrow them. And that silence, that space between who you were and who you are, that's the grave you buried your weakness in. You'll never be taken for granted again because you don't offer yourself so easily anymore. You don't show your hand. You don't hand over the blueprint to people who haven't earned it. You watch, you measure, you choose. Access to you now is rare, and when it's gone forever. There's no reset, no re-entry. You built the gate, you hold the key. They took advantage once, never again. They took advantage once, never again. They'll see it soon, not through words, through results. The new version of you doesn't explain himself, doesn't prove anything, doesn't look back. The new version doesn't react. He observes, he calculates, he builds, then he crushes. Let them doubt. Doubt is a gift. Doubt blinds your enemies to your arrival. They won't see it coming because you don't need to be seen anymore. Let them think you lost. Let them laugh. Let them flex their delusions. You've already won because the one who stays quiet owns the narrative. While they talk about you, you work on you. While they guess your next move, you make it. Success doesn't need to shout. It just shows up. In the bank, in the mirror, in the silence that follows your footsteps. You don't rise to prove them wrong. You rise because gravity doesn't own you anymore. You don't get revenge with words. You get revenge with distance, with peace, with power they can't reach. They'll look for the old you. The loud one, the reactive one, the one who needed them to see. But that version's buried, left behind like dead weight, burned away in the fire they started. You're steel now, sharpened in the dark, untouchable, unbothered, unbreakable. Let karma speak. It speaks in echoes, in empty rooms where your name used to be mocked, in silent mouths when your success walks in. The loudest thing in any room is presence, not noise, not words, just presence. Stand still and let it hit them, let it haunt them, let it humble them. You are not angry, you are not bitter, you are not loud, you are focused, you are final. You are done explaining. Let karma show them what silence builds. Because here's the law. The man who holds his tongue holds his throne. No one can argue with results. No one can gossip louder than a legacy. No one can block what's already written. They'll claim they knew you. They'll say they always believe, but silence remembers, and karma doesn't miss. So build in silence. Starve the ego. Feed the grind. Let your scars breathe. Don't waste energy correcting fools. Don't water dead plants. Don't announce your vengeance. Become it. Be the calm in the storm. Be the wolf in the woods. Be the fire they can't predict. Let the universe balance the scales. Let time expose the truth. Let karma do what karma does best. Because when it hits, it doesn't need subtitles. They'll hear it. They'll feel it. They'll remember. Not because you told them, because you didn't. Be quiet. Let karma speak loudly. Be quiet. Let karma speak loudly. Be quiet. Let karma speak loudly. They tried to bury you in noise, doubt, lies, laughter. And you almost believed it. You almost broke, almost explained, almost proved. But something deeper pulled you back. Not rage, not pride, disgust. Disgust with the part of you that still wanted their approval. Disgust with the part of you that thought justice had to be announced. Disgust with the weakness of needing to be understood. That's when it changed. That's when the noise stopped meaning anything. That's when silence became sacred. Because silence is not empty. It's loaded with patience, with precision, with power. You don't shout when you're about to strike. You don't explain when you've already won. They betrayed you and expected you to self-destruct. They mocked you and expected you to chase their acceptance. They walked away and expected you to crawl.